Right now, we're going to bring in the man of the hour, the next guest, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, wrestling legend, multiple-time Olympic gold medalist, and a former wrestling head coach of the University of Iowa. Under this man's reign, he's won over 15 NCAA national titles. He was head coach of the United States wrestling team in the Olympics in '84, '88, and 2000. Also gold medal winner of the 1972 Olympic Games in Munich, Germany, where he defeated Russian in a gold medal match. Bringing on right now, the man himself, the legend, Dan Gable. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Well, I'm just trying to catch up with you guys.
Okay. Hey, we thank you so much for coming on, man. It's an honor and a pleasure, as usual, having someone who's so dedicated and passionate about the business and who's accomplished so much. I know me and Tech has talked off air about it, and having you on is definitely an honor.
Well, I appreciate that, and anything I can do always for the sport of wrestling, I will do, because that's my passion. It stays within my family as well. I don't slight my family, I don't think, but at the same time, I hook them, and they're aboard, and so that makes it for one big happy family, I guess, as long as we're doing good and having fun and entertained and all those things. And so I guess when you win a lot, when you win 25 straight Big Ten titles in wrestling, you have a lot of things to yell about and scream and have fun and a lot of celebrations. And that's the same way with the NCAAs. Winning 15 of 21 in a row is good, but hey, I look at that and we could have won 6 more. So the bottom line is, it's that perfection. It's tough to get, and if you can strive for it, you can strive for it.
Yes, it is. So, I'll let you know, Mr. Gable. What would you like to call us? Would you like for us to call you Mr. Gable, or Dan? What would you like for us to refer you as?
Oh, you can call me Dan. You can call me Coach. I don't think, Mr. Gable, you don't have to do that unless you just forget. Call me, that's fine. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me, as long as it's respectful.
No problem. Well, once again, Dan, it's an honor to have you on. Me, myself, growing up as a fan of wrestling, I used to amateur wrestle in middle school and high school. They went first place in one of the wrestling tournaments, and of course, I followed you since my youth, you and other greats such as yourself. So it is an honor to have you on the show. Do you want to talk about first your beginnings? What started you loving wrestling? Was it something that you loved as a kid, or was something that you got into later on in life?
I'll tell you what started me wrestling is I was born into a community that was all the schools were wrestling, and really that meant that they had 3 great coaches. We had 2 high schools in Waterloo, Iowa, West Waterloo and East Waterloo, and both of their most successful programs were led by wrestling coaches. And then we have a community right next to us called Cedar Falls, Iowa, and they had a wrestling coach was pretty much their most successful sport as well. So we had that rivalry going, and we had 3 great coaches that really all the people in the community wanted their kids to wrestle, and not just because they were going to be the best, and because only so many kids can wrestle. And you got backups, but they always did really well, and the parents would love what those kids were gaining out of successful programs, and just learning some discipline, because these coaches, they really had the discipline to work the guys hard. For some reason, we had numbers, like we had 150 kids come out for wrestling, and most of them couldn't wrestle very well. But at the same time, they really were a part of successful programs or winning, and parents love that. And so that's kind of, I was born into that. Now, my dad also wrestled, but, he wasn't the wrestler that I was from a standpoint of being successful. But my uncle was a very good wrestler. He was like a state runner-up. I guess he would say that he's probably not a really good wrestler compared to where I went to World Championships or the Olympic Games. But that's pretty good. I mean, even if you get to the state tournament and you're only one of 16, and if you have a good high school state championships, that's pretty much of an honor. And so the people that are involved with our program or the program of wrestling, really get a lot out of it, just because of it's kind of one of the last sports that, it's almost like it's not too physical, but sometimes in schools, it's the opposite of what sometimes they want to see, because they don't like violence. And
right.
So, the wrestling is not really what I call violent. There's rules, regulations, there's safety, but you have to be a little bit aggressive. In fact, you have to be a lot aggressive to win in a wrestling match, and if you're going to win over and over again. So, sometimes you have to teach people what it does for you beyond just. In fact, what's really good is that females right now are becoming more involved in our sport. And we had trouble staying in the Olympics here recently, but we're in there now. But one of the main things that they wanted us to do was to focus more on the other gender. And so we have to have a sport in the Olympic Games that, that caters also to both sides. And so that's one of the things that it was a little difficult for us to do at the beginning. And because it took us a while to get going, but in reality, it's going well now. We've been in 4 Olympics, and we're in world championships every year with the females. But what's really important is that the females are spreading the word of how much discipline that they're learning, and then how good it is for them, and the fact that, I'll tell you what, just from a standpoint of, if you look at, like, at the University of Iowa, we've had some major assaults on campus, especially late night, young ladies walking from home from, whether it be at the library or whether at a bar or whatever. I think we had a half a dozen. Actually, we had about 10 or 12 last year. When the reputation of a female gets out there that they have more martial arts learning, are they a little bit? They're not an easy type prey situation with a sport like wrestling or judo or even karate or stuff like that. And if they're more well known for doing that, that's going to actually help that situation out. So there's a lot of things that's good about. But my hometown of Waterloo was almost every kid tried it. And actually most of them stayed out just because the coaches were so darn good. Those mentors are hard to beat.
Wow, man. I want to give a shout-out to you, Mr. Gable, a fan that sent us this. Shout-out to the late Gene Wilder, who was also alumni of the University of Iowa, and Ashton Kutcher. Oh,
of course.
I
knew that. Yeah, no, they're good. I've been actually, I haven't really been on the same stage with Gene, but with Ashton Kutcher, he's a local kid from maybe 10, 15 miles away from here. He actually wrestled a little bit. He's actually been over to my house. I've sat with him in events. He follows us quite a bit. And, Ashton Kutcher, he's been to some of the big meets that we have here, and of course, when he comes to town, he calls me because he knows I got good seats now that I'm not the coach, and so he can sit right there in the front row. But when he's there, and he actually brought his wife to be, or I don't know if they're married now or not yet, but he brought her, and I mean, I'll tell you what, I usually sit down there, and people come down to get my autographs for wrestling, but there was more people coming down to get autographs that night, and that match that he came over, and it was a big meet. The meet we didn't do so well. Usually we do very well, but Penn State came to town, and they are the top team in the country pretty much right now, and they did put a whipping on us that night. So it was one of those things that we didn't have as much excitement as we needed to have to keep him involved and his wife, because more people were interested in getting their autographs. So that's one of those things. But those are good Iowans. Definitely good Iowans. I have another good friend that went to school here. That's a famous author named John Irving that wrestles a lot, and he's a multi-bestseller. And actually, when I first came to Iowa from Iowa State, John Irving introduced himself. He wrestled for our wrestling club a little bit. He wrestled in high school out in the East, and we still stay close friends even today. So there's a lot of ties here at the university.
Wow, that is amazing. It is. Gameboy, I know you have to take care of some other business for the show. I'm going to still be on the show. I know you wanted to ask one last question to Mr. Gable.
Yes, Mr. Gable, my question to you is, since you have such a great championship run, you've been involved in so many great projects, and you've been on the top of the mountain for so long. What is some advice can you give to a person, a player, or a team who's been on top and lost? You know, a lot of times we interview people and we talk about their rise and how great it felt, and how it changed their life and stuff. But very few often we talk with people who actually lost and have to see a former shadow of themselves, a former shell of themselves. So what advice can you give to our fans that's listening who may be going through something right now, whether they're playing sports, this is kind of football season. Some may be going through, maybe a little bit of basketball, soccer, different type of sports meet, and their team is not winning, or they were a winning team and they don't really have it. Any advice to give to those young ones?
Yeah, I
always
got lots of advice. After 25 years of coaching and 10 years of being an athlete, and being at the top of the ladder there, I've seen all kinds, and I've been in all situations. So, my advice really, anytime you can prevent adversity, you want to prevent it. It's a lot of people thrive on some adversity, but I would always say that anytime you can get all the wins you can get and not have too many losses, that's the way to go. And what you do is you need to have somebody that really understands what you're trying to accomplish. It can be yourself or it can be other people, and usually you're going to have a combination of the two. And what you need to do is you need to really talk to those people. And it's like you can be the hardest working guy there or the girl, but it's really about what you're good at and how you can apply what you're good at instead of just trying to learn something all the time. And so, but you also have to understand like what you're trying to be good at. So say if it's wrestling, because that's what I'm talking about right now, then there's rules, and you got to understand what is really needed to be at that top, to be the most successful. And so, for example, in wrestling, you pretty much have to be good on your feet for takedowns. That's a maneuver. And then there's another avenue that you really have to learn, and that's what's called escapes or reversals. And you can break it down pretty simple. Don't make it difficult. Don't make it like impossible. So you break it down simple. And simple means I got to be good on my feet, and I got to be good on the bottom. That's in American wrestling, collegiate wrestling, scholastic high school wrestling. We're not talking so much international right now, because that's where I'm talking right now. But it actually is kind of funny, because internationally you still have to be good on your feet and you have to be good on the bottom too. So those are the two areas. So you learn and you see, well, that's where I need to spend my time on in practice, because that's where you win in matches. If you're good on your feet, if you're good on the bottom, it's pretty hard to get beat. It really is. Now, you also have to look at your own talent. And you might say, well, my best is maybe on top of somebody. Well, then when you get in competition, or even in practice, you might not have to work in practice so much on top of somebody, because you're already good there. But in a competition, that's where you want to be. So you don't kind of go by the rules then. You go where you want to be good at, not want to be good, where you're good at. And that helps a lot. But in practice, you work at the rules that'll make you better quicker. So that means takedowns. That means good defense on the standing wrestling. That means good escapes. But, again, don't take your individual attributes away. Now, you also have to understand that there's other things that are really important for the sport beyond just those skills. It's your attitude, or your flexibility, or your strength, or your conditioning. And so guess what? You got to go analyze it again. And if you really can't analyze yourself that way, look at your parents. You can see, just what you came from. And you can talk to other people. But, for example, you're built to run 100-meter dashes. Well, that means you're going to be explosive. That means you can probably get a lot of quick scores. But what about a 6-minute match or a 7-minute match? So you probably don't have to work on so many explosive things as far as running and for conditioning as compared to maybe need to run a mile. Maybe build up some endurance. So if you attack that smartness of hard work instead of just working hard, that will get you to where you want to go. Now, if you keep making the same mistake over and over again, well, then you're not really paying any attention to what you're doing. So that's why I'm saying, prevention's the best word. And if you make the same mistake over and over again, you're not really learning. And that adversity is really going to keep hitting to you. And so usually what it is like you have too many losses, and it starts to get to you, and you lose your confidence. So you know what? A good coach, you got to find a way to win a few matches. You do. You got to understand what that feels like, because once you get on a losing streak or a streak that's not healthy, it's easier to stay on that streak. So that's where you got to go to your coach. And your coach has to kind of work you into the lineup where you can get a couple wins and feel that feeling. And once you get that feeling, it's easier to be able to actually keep that confidence level up, because no matter what you do in anything, if you don't have confidence in it, it's really tough. But again, understand, evaluate. And I think the best thing I said to you was the smartness of hard work. Don't just be a hard worker, be a smart hard worker. And that's where you got to go for help a little bit if you don't really have all the answers. Now, when you go for help, don't think anybody can give you that help either. You better make sure you look at the person and have a good relationship with you. I'll tell you, my best help was my parents, and I'll tell you who else was, my high school teachers and coaches. I actually grew up a lot also in the YMCA when I was a kid, and so I was around a lot of great leaders. Now, you got to make sure you understand if they're great leaders or not. And it's pretty easy to understand that. And if they're not, and if you fall their way, then you got to get away from that. So that's kind of my nutshell. I know it's a lot. I threw a lot there, but I try to keep things simple, and I'm hoping that you picked up on that. All right?
That is great information, and you do keep it simple.
Are you there?
You do. Yes, we're here. Yes, we're here. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Mr. Gable, can you hear us? Okay.
Yes, I can.
I wanted to ask you, your motto, no points allowed. I know you've had a lot of documentaries on your life and on your career. I know ESPN did an 860, no points allowed. For those that may not understand, explain that motto and how much that motto means to you.
You mean what do you mean no points allowed? I mean you don't give up any points when you compete?
Yes.
Well, I tell you what, I don't really think about that in my training, but because I think about what I want to do and how I want to attack. If I have any kind of thoughts where I want to keep from getting scored on, or I want to just stop you from doing something, now I'm thinking more your way, and I'm not thinking my way. My way is what I can do good. My way is my approach, and the more I can stay in my mind on things that I can do as compared to try to counter and stop your things, it's the better. And that was the frame of mind that I had. If somebody would have told me going into the Olympic finals that, hey, this is your sixth match, nobody scored on you, and you really outscored everybody a lot, I probably would have went out there and lost a point right away, just because mentally I might have thought about it. And so that frame of mind is good. And a good coach will not actually put you in those corners. He'll try to keep you a little bit away from people that will remind you of things that you shouldn't be reminded of, because your focus, your concentration, your attention is going to make the difference basically on how much you actually approach the best style for you to wrestle. And sometimes the best style is not just totally aggressive, because you may be a guy or a person or a girl that actually counters in their wrestling and scores. Now, I don't like to give anybody anything. But the bottom line is some people wrestle different ways. And so you got to figure out that way that's best for you. But if you keep your opponent off and if you keep your opponent worried about you, that's exactly what you want. That's exactly what you want.
That is right. That is right. And that's a good point too. You know, for myself being a former athlete is when you don't think on it, you know, when it's not psychological, you're able to do it. And then when somebody bring it to your attention, that's all that's going to go in your head. And sometimes you can overthink. And, you know, though saying think long, you think wrong, you can end up, you know, messing that up too.
Right. So let me add to that. So the best way actually to actually compete is to not have to think what you have to do next. It's automatic. So say, for an example, right now, I'm sitting in a chair right now. Okay, I'm sitting in a chair talking on the phone. As soon as I'm done, or right now, if somebody was at the door, I'd just get up out of that chair and walk to the door. So did I stop and think, how do I get out of this chair? I got to rock forward. I got to roll, put my feet underneath me. I got to get up. And now how do I walk to that door? I put my right foot, and then I put my left foot. And if I'm thinking about all of that and it's not coming natural, then I haven't learned it well enough. Because you know what? It is a learning skill. Because when you're born, you don't know how to walk. You got to learn how to do that. But over time, it's automatic. And if you want to be good in something, the more automatic it is as compared to the thought process of getting it accomplished, the better you're at. The better you're going to do it. So it's just like reading. The faster you can read because you practice and you read a lot, the more you can absorb, or just doing homework. You know, the smarter you are in arithmetic or algebra, the more you know it, the more it comes. But when you go in there and you don't know a lot about it, you have to do a lot of deep thinking, then it's going to take you a long time, and chances are you're probably not going to get the right answer anyway. I know you're not going to win in a wrestling match, because if you have to all the time just react and stop. The guy shoots on me to take me down, and I'm thinking, okay, he's shooting. What do I do? Oh, I got to sprawl. So by that time, I'm in the air and I'm on my back. That's the bottom line.
I like that. That is a good observation. I do like that. So you do it long enough or well enough, it becomes second nature, like muscle memory. You don't have to think on it at all.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to ask you to kind of jumping ahead now. We'll get back to your career. Is Brock Lesnar, of course, he's in WWE, and, of course, he wrestled in UFC. He also was a former NCAA champion. Your thoughts of Brock Lesnar being a wrestler, UFC, and in collegiate wrestling?
Hey, I really like Brock Lesnar. Now, you know, I shouldn't say that because he kept one of my athletes from becoming a national champion in the national finals. I mean, it was all the way down, I think, to overtime even, and it could have went either way. And he happened to win, and you know, he's a guy named Wes Hand. He beat in the national finals. But you know, but I've talked to Brock several times, and knowing where he came from and what he's accomplished and what he's done in his life, you know, I feel, you know, like, you know, he's a good man. Now, you hear a couple things about him. I don't know exactly. I don't know if he, you know, he didn't. I don't know if he did or didn't. You could tell me. But didn't he have a fight and maybe he was disqualified after or not? I'm not sure on that one.
Yes, he got suspended. You know, I believe he got like some type of suspension after his UFC fight.
Right, and so, you know, and now you got to check into that and see, you know, why that was the case. You know, was it something that he didn't know about, or was something that he actually did to try to get an edge? You know, so, you know, the edge in athletics is the mind, and the body works from that, because, you know, it's like even a lot of the Russians this year got kicked out of the Olympics before they even got there because they had a doping violation. And so, you know, it's when I remember when I went to the Olympics, people ask me about that. What if you're going to go up against somebody that you know, has snuck in there and has a doping type of situation? I said, I hope they do, because you know what? That's the ones that are weak in the mind, and you know, and I don't think they can keep up with me. And so, you know, and so you got to get inside these people's minds. So, you know, for Brock, I know Brock's got some great talent. He's got some great skills. And there's a guy that all he has to do is just focus on training good and hard, and he'll be fine. So for me, it's the same way about anything. It's just a matter of whether you pay the price, you do the work, and you break it down to the point where it becomes second nature. And if it becomes second nature, then you're right in line to win. You're right in line to win.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your words with Brock. Talk about, Mr. Gable, your training when you were an athlete. Talk to us about how hard you trained, and give us a play-by-play, if you can, quickly about how much you train every day. And now I have some experience with training amateurly, but I'm pretty sure you being the great legend that you are, I'm pretty sure you went over beyond when it came to training for your matches.
I was probably the guy that they always looked at, too. That was the guy that trained the most, the hardest, and, over time, the smartest, And I don't think I was always the guy that trained the smartest until it actually until I got beat in a major match. And a lot of it had to do with my focus and concentration, but that's part of being smart. So for me, it was one of these things that you got to do things right. And you got to do them in the right order. You don't go to a tournament or a championship and it's at the peak of your career. And if you do this, you're going to be a record performance. You don't start going there. You don't start accepting awards before your championship match is over. You don't do all these interviews. There's certain obligations. But in college and in high school and the Olympics, even though the Olympics now are starting to be more professional from a standpoint of finance and all that kind of stuff, you got some obligations. But you don't want to ever take what's away from you. That's what's going to make you win, because otherwise they're not going to want you. So what I did before I wrestled, that after I won 181 matches, 7 years undefeated, and I do an interview right before I wrestled. And
right.
It's like, and they convinced me that was the only time they could do it. They had to do it right then. So I said, for the sport, okay. So, and they convinced me that I couldn't do it after. Well, guess what? I did it before, I lost, and guess what? It wasn't any good anymore, because what I said was, come watch me as I finish my career undefeated, 182-0. And so guess what? They went to the other guy, and they did an interview with him, and then they put that interview on. So they really did have time. They just wanted to inconveniently or conveniently for them, do things on their order. When in fact, an athlete he should make sure, and he doesn't. There's certain things you can do, but you don't do things right before you compete. That's going to disrupt any kind of focus, concentration, warm up, whatever you want to do. So get your match done, get your competition done, and then because you won, people will ask you, and people will want to interview you more. Even though they would have wanted to interview me just because I lost, but it's like you're a mess, and so it just doesn't work as well. Just doesn't work as well.
If you can, of course, with everything going on with the current Olympics, they just passed with with Michael Phelps, and of course with Lochte. Your thoughts of Michael Phelps, being, of course, from here in Maryland, being a great athlete he is, and your thoughts, if any, on Lochte and what he did.
Yeah, Michael Phelps is obviously one of the greatest swimmers. He is the greatest swimmer by far. I mean, he's had kind of a troubled, era at times, but he's still been able to be very successful. But I think this was his most successful as far as I'm concerned. And I think he's actually maybe, maturing. He's got a kid, he's got a girlfriend. And you know what? That could go array on him. And he could have to handle these things. So hopefully he's more stable and he'll keep things stable, because, I just really think that he's a guy that can be a mentor for so many people for so long. I mean, that's unbelievable, what he has accomplished. Now, Lochte, that's a different story. I think it's going to take him winning Dance with the Stars to get him back in there. But you know, I'm not sure on Lochte. Just you know, it's just, you know, he apologized, and I think his actions from now on will kind of determine where he's at. So, but
okay.
I'll talk about my own sport. So, wrestling.
Sure. Now,
at the Olympic Games.
Wrestling.
At the Olympic Games, you know, we had two people that were favored to be the gold medalists that didn't even medal. That was Jordan Burroughs, and that was Adeline Gray. And Adeline Gray was going to be our first Olympic champion for females. Now, we got another Olympic champion for females this time, Helen Maroulis. But that could have been double the punch for us. So if we would have just had our mainstay come through, we would have had two female world Olympic champions. And we also, you know, had another Olympic champion in Kyle Snyder, who was the defending world champion. Yeah, and he was the defending world champion, but he had gotten beat a few times during the year, and he was ranked like fourth going into the championships. But he won it, and if we could have got Burroughs to come through, that would have been 4 gold medals. That would have been 100% more than the punch. In fact, way more. So, you know, we needed to have our mainstay come through. And I tell you, as a coach, that's what you look for. You look who's really the person that has been leading the way, and a lot of times you kind of let them go a little bit because, like, okay, they're the shoe-ins. You know what? They're not the shoe-ins. They did what they did because you got them ready. And you know what? When you start taking them for granted that they're going to win, they're going to lose. And that's what happened probably a little bit with Jordan Burroughs and Adeline Gray. Right. Adeline Gray had beaten this girl 9 times, my understanding was. And so she thought she could just win the match by 1 point and not have to really, you know, secure the match. Because if she could have secured the match by a lot of points going into the last 30 seconds or 5 seconds where she got turned, she would have still won the match. But she called it too close. And Jordan Burroughs, for some reason, was worried more about what he was going to do afterwards as far as maybe sponsorships or, you know, whatever. He had some good quotes in there. And he was definitely on the wrong track. I never saw him where he was, like, hanging around, being less aggressive, just kind of doing not a whole lot during his matches. So his mind definitely wasn't there. So wrestling, we had an opportunity to really punch it out there and get 4 Olympic champions, and we ended up with 2. So, you know, we're still going to have to scrap a little bit. We're going to have to scrap a little bit and do a lot of things with our sport to make it even better in the future.
Now, question: if I'm correctly doing my research, you end up successfully coaching 3 wrestling teams and winning the Olympic gold medal. Is that correct? The 84, actually, 88, and 2000?
Yeah, it's a little bit. I've been in 8 Olympics as far as athlete and then coaching. I coached the 1980 team that did not go to Russia, Moscow. So I was the head coach of that team. Then I was the head coach of the 84 team, and obviously the Russians boycotted, and that hurt us quite a bit in wrestling. But we still got a lot of. We were voted in 1984 the most successful sport there in the Olympic Games from the United States. We had 10 weight classes in freestyle wrestling, and we ended up getting 7 gold and 2 silver. So we got a lot of really recognition for our sport back in '84. And then I also coached the 2000 Olympic team where we ended up getting like 3 or 4 medals. But I also coached in between those years, you know, like 6 or 7 world championship teams that they go all over the world. And then I also coached like 8 or 9 World Cup teams or even more, maybe 11, which is team championships. Right. It's like the top teams from the last year's World Championships, and you score the points. They have dual meets. So I've been around for those. And, you know, our best wrestling countries are Russia and Iran. We get along with them pretty good in sport. And, you know, the wrestlers actually, you know, because there's a lot of politics between Russia and the United States, a lot of politics between Iran and the United States. But from a standpoint of sport and wrestling, we're kind of we get along pretty good.
I will mention someone that I'm sure you know very well, a good friend of mine, professionally and personally. We've had him on the show. Mark Schultz was on our show earlier this year, and I know he was a part of that '84 wrestling team, along with his late brother David Schultz. Could you talk to us about the Schultz brothers, and if you got a chance to watch the movie?
The Schultz brothers treated me with a lot of respect. They really were unique athletes. They focused a lot on that international style. They got a lot accomplished. Dave was just year after year after year, and Mark kind of followed a little bit in his footsteps. But Mark actually did better in college, and actually, did an unbelievable job in the international competition as well. Now, I might have I will say this about the Schultz brothers, that they're probably not the easiest guys to coach if it was a normal coach in there. And because I had a lot of credentials and they respected me, and we had some battles when they were at the University of Oklahoma and I was coaching the Hawkeyes, we had some big-time battles. They actually did things in training that I don't think they normally would have done with another coach. But because I was the coach, I actually got them to do it. Because they had their own way of training. A lot of it was technical. A lot of it was just tough, hard-nosed wrestling and doing a certain way of certain style. But for me, I added a lot of elements of making sure that they were in the best shape, and I added a lot of elements of wrestling from different positions. So they never really boycotted me as a coach at all. By that I mean, refused. I think they maybe didn't like some of the stuff, and maybe I wasn't as smart as I should have been sometimes, but I think we all ended up being right in the long run. So, Mark Schultz is, I'm not sure exactly where, how he's doing with his life. I'm hoping that he does a really good job with it, because I know that, with his brother getting murdered like that, I'm sure it affected him unbelievably. And, I can relate with him only from the standpoint that I had a sister that got murdered in my own house when I was a kid. And because of that, I think we kind of can understand the situation a little bit. Thank you.
Yeah, I do send my condolences to you. I haven't talked to Mark in a couple of months, but we do text here and there to check on each other. Good guy. He does he travels. He's a motivational speaker and does a lot of seminars, and he seems to be doing well. So I definitely send Mark your regards, and let him know that you did say hi.
For sure.
Also, now, something you may not get asked about, I do notice doing our research, preparing for this interview, that on the '84 Olympic team and other teams, you had a lot of freestyle wrestlers, something that I did as well. But you also had, for the light heavyweight and the super heavyweight, you had Greco-Roman wrestling. How were you for training for Greco-Roman? I know it's totally different from freestyle. Is that a style that you're a fan of as well, or are you more towards the freestyle?
Oh, hey, I am a fan of wrestling. For me, it's about throwing them down and pinning them. That's the bottom line. So we have, we have scholastic style, we have intercollegiate, we have freestyle, we have Greco-Roman. For me, it's, the guys that really say, well, that style's not for me. I disagree, because it's all about the total sport. There's unlimited situations in a lot of freestyle wrestling, because you can do all these Greco holds that you can learn. Now, Greco is limited, and you can't do some leg tackles and things like that. But Greco has been around longer than the other style of freestyle, and it's strong in a lot of the European and Asian countries. So, you need to learn it. I'm looking for the guys in America that want to take on both styles. I don't think too many people have. I saw a Russian took on both styles a couple of years ago, and I think he got 2 bronze. I think when I wrestled in '72, we had a big heavyweight named Chris Taylor that weighed 450 pounds. He went both styles. He only got a bronze in freestyle. He didn't place in Greco. But I'm looking for those athletes that want to take on the challenge of going both styles and winning gold medals for America in both styles. We're having enough trouble just getting them to win one style, but I'd like to see them win both styles. Now, the girls can't do that right now because they just wrestle freestyle. But that kind of mentality is what I love. I love that kind of mentality.
Yeah, and that's a good point that we didn't we've never seen that before where American does both styles, freestyle, Greco-Roman. I think that would be great accomplishment for anybody to do.
Well, it can be done. It can be done. There's some young kids coming up right now that I think because they've been starting since they've been kindergarten, some of these guys need that kind of goals because otherwise they might burn out a little bit. They might, just quit before they can really expand. And so wrestling, there's so much to learn. I mean, I've been wrestling my whole life. I'm still learning. But just the fact that you incorporate goals like that would actually keep these guys maybe more interested and more technical. A lot of times, instead of just learning wrestling, people taught me like a judo, leg sweep, and it came in handy. So hip tosses, most of those things are wrestling holds, but like they're really like more judo, a leg sweep, even though we can do them. But I tell you, in the semifinals of the World Championships, I was having a tough match, and I caught the wrestler that I was wrestling in a full-blown leg sweep where he flew and I flew and I landed on top of him and pretty much knocked him out, and he just kind of rolled over. But it was a move that you would learn more in like a class that if you took a judo class. So.
Oh wow, yeah. Hopefully we do get to see that the Greco-Roman and freestyle wrestling. Somebody from America that takes on both styles. If you don't mind, Mr. Gable. You won the gold medal in 1972 in Munich, Germany, of course. The 72 Olympics, very well documented. If you can quickly tell us your experience being in Munich, Germany, and about your your gold medal match against, of course, the Russian.
Well, it wasn't too long after that gold medal match, about within 48 hours, that they had those mass killings, and China changed the complexion for the Olympic Games. I'm pretty, I was already done with and completed with my wrestling. And if you ask me how would that have affected me, you know what? They continued with the Olympic Games. I think it was the right thing to do because I think that they felt like they could stop the Olympic Games, the terrorists, and that would be exactly what they wanted to do. Instead, we continued and held those. I'm sure some athletes, a lot of them, were affected by it. But I think if there was going to be one athlete that wouldn't have been affected as much, just that narrow vision, it probably would have been me. And even when I say that one of the wrestlers in my weight class was from Israel, and he actually got murdered, and there. So but the crazy thing is, I read more about it now and look into it more. That I'm a coach and I'm beyond, and I'm in administration and I'm in my sport. So. Those things happen. But in 72, I didn't really think about going there to win a gold medal. I just thought about how hard I'm going to compete. And when they blew the whistle, I competed the whole time I was out there, whether I was pinning the guy and they stopped the match, or whether I was accumulating more points. And it wasn't like I stall on or anything like that. Now, when it came right down to it in the last maybe 30 seconds of the Russian match at the end, the only way he could beat me was to pin me, because there was a style and there was a system at that time that was a little bit different. And in wrestling, when you get on your back in international wrestling, it's only like a fraction of a second. You touch both shoulders, you can get pinned. Okay. So there's even though you're way ahead, you can still lose that match right up to the end. And so I learned how to wrestle smart. And I mostly just controlled the ties and made sure that athlete wasn't going to get anything on me, but as compared to me continuing to be like offensive dominant. And, that's where smartness comes in there. But I could have lost that match by 7 or 8 points and still won. But that's not what you want to do. And you know what? I didn't even know I could do that because I didn't stop and think about it. Both my World Championships and my Olympic Games, we had a pairing system that you could actually, if you dominated enough going into the finals, you could actually lose those matches. And you don't want to think about that, because usually when you think about it, that you can lose and still win, you usually do lose that match. And if there's a way that guy going to win by pinning you or something like that, well, then you usually probably get pinned. So you got to still keep that frame of mind that got you there continued throughout the whole tournament.
Oh, wow. Oh, thanks for that. And how did it feel for you when you won your gold medal, your first gold medal? Explain your thought process. Like how I know it meant a lot, of course, but just let us inside your head and inside your body when you won your gold medal in '72.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there was no sitting down during the national anthem. So the American flag was there, and it was like it was a flashback. A lot of things in my life that had taken place all of a sudden flashed back and before my eyes, and it was pretty amazing. It was like an experience that you got to win the Olympics to feel, and that's tough to do. And I didn't realize how exhausted I was either, just because you go through an Olympic Games and in my day you had to go 5 days of wrestling instead of just now they go 1 day. And you get more tired in that 1 day, but it's not quite as mentally exhausting as going 5 days. And so, it's one of these things. When I was done, I realized that I just wanted to sit down, but I didn't, because I stood there for the national anthem, and then then I was able to absorb all of the things that go through your mind in times of certain times. And one of those certain times when you win the gold medal and you're standing up there and the American flag is waving and you're the top of the podium. So it's an experience that you can't really describe. It's just, I mean, I know that my sister crossed my mind because it did, and she was like congratulating me or whatever, and part of the reason is because with you learn lessons in life. And one of the lessons I learned early on because of my sister losing her life is that there's communication out there. And if you don't communicate, then you're not doing justice. And when I had actually been tipped off a little bit about somebody that was interested in my sister in a negative way, and I didn't say anything. And within 2 weeks or 3 weeks, this person actually murdered her. So, it's just like you learn and you don't drag it out, but you got to communicate. And whether you can save somebody's life or just do something a little bit better, you do the right thing and you don't keep things inside. So, anyway.
Well, thank you for that, sir. I do. Thank you for that. Well, what I want to do now, sir, time is of the essence of the show. Right now, I want to give you a moment where we call it a plug party, where once you give a chance, let everybody know about. You have your great museum. Let everybody listening now, or that will be listening later on a recorded version, how to get in contact with you about your museum and anything else that you have upcoming.
Sure. In my hometown of Waterloo, Iowa, where I grew up in, they actually honored me by having a wrestling museum there. It's a division of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame out of Stillwater, Oklahoma. It's a branch. It's up in Iowa, and it's called the Dan Gable National Wrestling Hall of Fame. And we actually have had it for quite a few years, and it's going through a process of getting updated right now. By that I mean we're actually going to get it more fan-friendly. We're going to get it more kid-friendly. It's not going to be just something you just look at on the wall. It's going to be interaction. You got to keep current. We also have something that's very unique in that museum. We have an actual wrestling room and training room there that we actually allow clubs and kids to come in there and train. And we're going to expand that 3 times what it is. So it's not just a museum. It's actually working. You can work in there you can see all you want to do from a motivational point of view, but it's not just about me. It's about the total sport. And so that's what's really good about it. And we also, we have that wrestling room, and we're going to have more interaction. And if you're interested in helping the youth and helping the sport of amateur wrestling, or anybody from an excellence point of view, it's you can go online and look it up and see how you can help, because I think we're going to spend probably about $1.2 or $3 million to renovate what we have right now, and we're just in the process of fundraising right now to do that.
Oh wow! Yeah, I definitely one day would love to come by to your museum and get to be able to see it in person, and definitely get to meet you in person. I want to mention one other name. Former guest of the show, he did retweet and promote the fact you were coming on tonight. Kurt Angle, Olympic gold medalist in the '96 games. Get your thoughts of him.
Yeah, Kurt Angle, I tell you, we just inducted him into that Hall of Fame. We have a pro wing there, which I didn't point out. It's not just an amateur wrestling Hall of Fame. It also has a pro wing, and Kurt Angle just got inducted, I think within a year. And when he got up to give his speech a little bit, he said so many good things about me. It just about floored me. And so, that really, felt like he was the one that's getting the honor, but, he gave me the honor. So I really appreciate Kurt Angle, and I know that he's done a lot of things in his life, and everything he seems like he's done it well, and that's pretty good. That's pretty darn good. And he has not just been a pro wrestler. He's been an amateur wrestler, world champion, Olympic champion. He's been in the pro business. He's been, I think he's been a professional or a bodybuilder. I think he's also been in the movies. He does it all.
Done it all.
He does it all. Yep.
Yeah, good guy, great guy. We got to see him. I believe the week last year when here in Baltimore, we sadly had the riots. We got to meet Kurt Angle in person. We interviewed him and got to talk at a show here in Maryland. And Kurt Angle took time out of his schedule, and he does so much with the youth in the community. The actual school we were at had, of course, their local wrestling team. Kurt took time out to talk to everybody on the team. He did like a group speech. He talked to each one of the kids one-on-one, took pictures, signed autographs. Such a great guy. And this is after his match. A lot of guys, they wrestle their match and they leave right away. You don't get to see him. But Angle took time out, talked to each one of those kids one-on-one, took pictures, talked to them as a team.
Yeah, he came to our inductions, and Kurt actually just had been off a surgery, a neck kind of vertebrae little surgery. And, we thought he was going to be, he got that taken care of. But he went right from our event back to the hospital because he had to do some kind of another type of surgery to correct the first surgery. So something went wrong, and just the fact that he was probably there in pain, it's amazing that he still showed up.
Yeah, Kurt Angle's a great guy. And definitely you are, Mr. Gable, as well. Definitely a great guy. It was an honor to have you on our show. Hopefully, sir, we can have you back on our show for part 2. Of course, much more to talk about your career in wrestling. Any last words that you have for the listeners listening live?
My only last words is I put a book out a couple years ago. It's called A Wrestling Life, and Amazon sells it, and it's just a short story book, and it's entertaining, and it tells a lot. And I'm in the final stages of a second book. It actually made the New York Times bestsellers list, but this next one, the complaint about the first book was it wasn't long enough. It was too short, they said, and they also complained. They said, well, we really liked your book. It wasn't long enough, but we really want to know more in depth of what you do during your actual training sessions or in your life, how you got these kids to come through, instead of just being kind of superficial. So the second book is more in depth, and it won't be out yet for probably another 6 months or 9 months. But it's something that's good for our sport, but it's more than that. It's good for anybody, entertaining wise, CEOs, coaches, athletes, moms, dads. Because I also talk a lot about my family in there, and that's critical for success on and off the mat or in the business world or or just in life. So thank you.
No problem, Mr. Gable. We'll be in contact very soon to bring you back on, and I want to give a shout-out to Jen. I know you know who Jen is, and I spoke to her earlier. Thank you, Jen, for letting all this happen. Mr. Gable, you have a blessed night, and we'll be talking soon.
All right, thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Everybody, that was the wrestling legend, multiple-time Olympic gold medalist, Mr. Dan Gable himself. Please check him out on Twitter at Danny Gable. Please check out on Twitter Dan Gable Museum in Iowa. I definitely would love to be able to go there in person. Please check that out. Go on YouTube, go on ESPN. Mr. Gable has had tons of documentaries on his life. ESPN did a few documentaries as well, and I believe another company did documentary too. But Mr. Gable, it was an honor to have you on the show. Thank you for coming on and gracing us with